Good evening and a very warm welcome to all of you who have joined us live on YouTube today for the third session of the Knowledge series, Building India's Futuristic Schools Vision 2025. My name is Prachi Mishra and I'm a senior analyst at QS IGAUGE, India's first school and higher education rating system. For those of us who are joining the series live for the first time today, this roundtable series with school principals, directors, CEOs has been curated to focus specifically on how Indian schools are preparing to turn challenges into opportunities so that they can become the best and world class institutions. So, in these discussions, we will uncover views of educationists on leadership, quality, skill development, and various other areas that will help in making India's schools and its students future ready. Another very important highlight of the Roundtable series is the research report that we would be publishing, capturing the insights from these discussions. And also, we have had two very engaging discussions with the education leaders in Bangalore and Delhi NCR region. And today, we are moving on to our third session with an esteemed panel from Mumbai, Pune, and Nagpur. So, with that introduction to the context of this series, I move on to bringing on all the panelists to this session today. I invite our first panelist, Dr. Shanila Joy Chauhan, Principal of Thakur International School, Mumbai, for IGCSE and A levels. She has received many prestigious awards like Shining Image of India, Nation Builder Award, Impact Awards, Acharya Vinoba Bhave Award on World Teachers' Day, just to name a few. She strongly advocates experiential learning and feels that the 21st century skills are a necessary part of the life of Generation Z. A warm welcome to you, Shanila ma'am.
Thank you so much for having me here and greetings from Thakur International School and looking forward to discussing these important issues along with my fellow panelists. And a big thank you to you all for organizing this kind of a platform for us all.
Thank you, ma'am. So our next panelist is Ms. Trupti Agarwal, Chairperson of Vishwakarma Schools in Pune. She is currently in the leadership position for four unique educational institutions, Wisdom World School, Vishwakarma International Schools, Vishwakarma Vidyalaya and University, catering to children and youth from diverse backgrounds. She believes in making quality education accessible to every child and youth in India, and that all individuals deserve the opportunity to be educated. It's a pleasure to have you with us, Trupti ma'am. Welcome.
Thank you, Prachi. Thank you, QS iGauge, for organizing this and having me here with such eminent personalities. Looking forward for the session. Thank you.
Same here. Thank you, ma'am. I now invite Ms. Seema Saini, who is the CEO of NL Dalmia Education Society, Mumbai, and heads the K-12 ICSE school as the principal. Ms. Saini is professionally certified in various areas of project management and leadership from prestigious global institutions. She has been appointed on the panel of inspectors for affiliating schools for ICSE and ISC, and she is also the Vice President of Association of ICSE Schools of Maharashtra. A very warm welcome to you, Seema ma'am.
Thank you so much, Prachi. A pleasure to be here today and amongst this eminent panel of educators. And it would be my pleasure to interact with each one of you today. Thank you so much.
Welcome, ma'am. Looking forward to it. And last but not the least, I would invite Mr. Ajinkya Ambarkhane, Director of Meghe Group of Schools in Nagpur. He has been responsible for designing and implementing school development initiatives, new work processes and strategies, drive government-funded projects, and enhancing technology-enabled learning. He has also designed and executed training modules for over 1,000 school teachers of Meghe Group of Schools and over 20,000 students. A very warm welcome to you, Ajinkya sir.
Thank you, Prachi and iGauge, for giving us this opportunity. And I'm sure there are many things to learn from this webinar for all of us.
Welcome, sir. So it's a great pleasure to have all of you on this panel today. And without any delay, I will deep dive right into the questions that we have lined up for this discussion. And Like every panel that we've had so far, we begin with listening from all our panelists on what have been the key learnings from all the challenges that the educationists have faced in 2020. So I want to hear about your key learning or key takeaway from this last 1 year. And we can start with Shunila ma'am and then go around the panel. Ma'am, over to you.
Yes, so I'm sure that we were all sailing in the same boat when we went in for the lockdown. And what we learned was, first of all, stop waiting for some time in the future when things are going to get back to exactly the way it was. So adapting to change was the first key learning for not only myself but all the teachers and educators all round, that yes, get ready for the changes. We have to make parents, children also adapt to it. So once we embraced it, it was easy to convince. It was easy for us to get everyone on the same platform and partner together with the parents, children, and of course the teachers. Initially, so much technology was the biggest fear, that how will we manage with everything being so, using online learning, and how will we deliver classes, how will we control discipline. But we did that, and fortunately in my school we were doing a lot of things, like we were using Google Classroom and all, of course not teaching online, but yeah, that's what we learned, that yes, you can do it, it's okay to make mistakes. Children helped us also a lot. We helped the teachers to get upskilled, everyone was ready to learn. And that was the biggest one of the things, is that we'll have to do a little bit of trial error, train everyone in small groups. We also had to do it so that uh, if we could guide people better. Parents also were supportive, and I think adapting and embracing technology was what was the most biggest takeaway for uh, us as as a whole, all the education, the entire whole lot of us, along with the children. So this was the biggest thing.
Thank you, ma'am. So I think we all would agree with you that it has really tested our adapting skills or how well we are ready to adapt to various challenges that come our way. So that's really something that resonates with all of us here. Trupti ma'am, what are your key takeaways from this last one very challenging year?
So last 1 year has been challenging for schools, but as everything has two sides of it, one positive and one negative, I think COVID came as a boon for Indian schooling. So we all have adapted to technology very soon. If it was not COVID, I'm sure we would have not graded for next 5 6 years the way we are using technology. uh, we believe that necessity is mother of all innovation, and this is what has happened now. When it was necessary, we all have risen up to the occasion, and we have adapted technology beautifully, as ma'am said. And not only this, but we have also seen the human side of teachers. Teachers were always treated as professionals and not as a human being. But because we have schools across the economic strata, there were schools which are from very lower income group. They didn't have any smartphones or computers, and even if we could provide them with computers or tablets, we were not able to provide them with the bandwidth, which was again a challenge for them. So they used to go on the classes after their parents were back from the work, and so forth. So the teachers used to, work. There were no working hours for teachers. They used to start at early in the morning, and at times we have seen our teachers going up till late nights, till late evenings when the parents were back. So this was like means how a teacher is so important, which we have realized in this last 1 year, along with technology. So technology can enable, enhance education, but yes, teacher is the center of attraction and the maybe say an anchor in every student's life.
Very, very well said, ma'am. Because yeah, if it wasn't for teachers ready to, and they were also managing their personal lives along with adapting to the change and making sure that that stress is being mitigated for the students as well. It has been a remarkable work done by the teachers everywhere across all sections of education. Seema ma'am, we'd like to hear from you now.
Sure. I totally agree with what Ms. Trupti said and what Shanila ma'am said. Absolutely, both of them have been bang there. Adaptive, being adaptive was absolutely necessary and the need of the hour at that point of time. And the other side, where the teachers rose to the occasion, and they've proved like just no one else, no industry could adapt as soon and as quickly as education did to this lockdown and to the to the phase that we were in, where everyone was at home, and some of the industries couldn't really adapt as quickly as schools and education took it on. So both of them have been banged there. So I would say one key takeaway for all of us here comes as being in a state of preparedness. And so when Section 144 hit Mumbai, where when before the lockdown was announced, it was that the schools and malls and all of these would be shut down, and we were to reopen on 19th March. So we said, let's not waste time. We could immediately go to the flipped classroom approach and send some assignments on our LMS, and so that we'll be able to do much more of activities when the school reopens. It's going to be just about 10 days or a week or so, and we'll be back there. That was the thought process. And the way the lockdown unfolded, the way this whole thing stretched off, and we noticed being adaptable to the change, and not only that, that the way the teachers reacted to it, using their wares to the fullest, how best they could do it. Resilience proved to be one very strong character and trait that came across each and everyone associated with, I think, education. So right from the management, top management, to the last key or the last person in the chain, they were all resilient to this change that happened. And I think the day in and day out little modules of training that keeps happening continuously in school, all that stood in good stead. And the key learning was obviously being in a state of preparedness, which was so very much essential and which should be there across in all aspects of our lives. Whatever comes, you can never predict, anything can come in, and we should be ready to take that on. And of course, yeah, learning never stops, so we had to keep going. That was the key takeaway, I would say. Anytime, anywhere, learning, and learning never stops. So that was what was in our mind continuously, and we went on with that. So that's my two bit on our takeaway.
Yeah, very, very true, ma'am. Because when it all started, we were hoping it will be a 2 week, 3 week thing, but it just kept going on and on. And we all were tested on how resilient and how persevering we are to keep going without any certain idea of where this is going to end. So that is something that has been an experience for everyone in the education sector, especially because the learning was not supposed to stop and it did not stop. So thank you for your points there. And
Right.
Mr. Ajinkya, we would like to hear your thoughts on the key challenges, the key takeaways that emerge from the challenges.
So, Prachi, how I would like to summarize the entire last year would be, I mean, from more than 100 years, our entire focus was on improving the teacher-led, classroom-led training and schooling for kids. And that was the only option that we were aware of and we thought would work for ages from now. But then COVID makes us realize that we need to have a standby arrangement which can supplement regular schooling in needed times. And the ed tech or the softwares, the learning platforms which were previously supplementary platforms, and schools who could afford it were only having it, suddenly became the only thing which was required if you want to continue schooling even in the COVID times. So that was one major takeaway. We further also realized that though online schooling was the only option, actually its implementation was the hardest part. I mean, from where I am speaking with 20 plus schools and 20,000 plus students, uh, with such a huge number of students, the IT infrastructure at schools we can arrange with management approvals and funds, but ensuring that a student is having it at his home was a tricky challenge when we have schools across geography. And you cannot push parents for making that IT infra available to the student at home. So that was one big challenge. And we did pilot runs in May and April, but then when we realized that this is going to go long, and when we started regular online schooling from June, July onwards, initially there were hiccups. We learned through them, we improved on it, and once we gain the parents trust on us that the schools are doing good even in online schooling, then they actually started cooperating schools, making students sit for the class. And another valuable asset I feel is parent trust which was developed is what would be a takeaway for me. And I think here onwards, digital learning, or blending virtual learning platforms within regular schooling would be the obvious choice, and blended learning would be the future, is what we feel.
Thank you, sir. So, as you mentioned, the shying away from technology was really put to test in that 1 year because we were not really prepared to embrace technology the way we had to. And it has been mentioned by even Shunila ma'am and by Tripti ma'am that we probably might not have done it if we were not thrown into this situation where we were left with no option. But
True.
now, in the last few months, we've realized that no, we are now almost there to have a blended approach, and it's no longer such a fearful thought to try something which is not familiar, and you can connect with anyone virtually. So that has been a great learning and takeaway for all of us. So thank you, everyone. These were very extremely crucial insights on the key learnings from 2020. So I would like to now move on to what do you envision as a school leader that the school landscape will look like in the next 5 years? So what is that future of schools that you're looking at as a school leader? So maybe we can start with Seema ma'am and go around the panel.
Sure. In fact, I would say that it was self-directed learning that gained a lot of momentum, and ownership and being responsible for your own learning. We keep talking about it all the time, and like it was rightly pointed out by Shunila ma'am and Tripti ma'am as well, that we were doing things, but we didn't have that kind of that we would resort to it so completely using technology and involving that in our learning processes. So technology was definitely being used in our schools earlier also. Say at the most PowerPoints that were prepared by teachers, or say some degree of time that was allocated to that kind of teaching learning. But with technology completely being used now through the medium being technology, automatically sharing screens, showing good modules, those encapsulated little videos that needed to be shown, or all of that, the way the teaching preparation before teaching began, and the teaching time that was taken so that the attention could be retained of children could be engaged and teaching could begin, all of that needed a different focus altogether. Trainings were happening earlier on in school, but now the focus again had to be regenerated of involving technology in that manner. So self-directed learning, of course, gained a lot of momentum because initially it was noticed that end of the day, it was where the children are going and what is the teacher doing with her, because teacher was also learning simultaneously with this whole new medium that came up of engaging children completely online. Here, the teacher also needed to be effectively learning alongside to retain the attention of children, use new techniques in classrooms so that she could keep the children being engaged, involved in the class. So, as a school leader, we would just say, yes, next 5 years, what are we going to look at? This has come to stay. This will not go. The hybrid version of education is going to be there. So, online and offline, of course, but the way this is going to be put together, the usage of technology would be much more end to end. Students would be, that's my understanding of the whole thing, end to end, when students would be using technology along with their own learning, along with the supplemented classroom teaching or assessments and evaluations that would happen right from preparation to presentation, a student would be involved in. So this is where I feel that the hybrid model, the blended form, as they say, of teaching learning is going to gain a lot of importance, but the underlining factor remains self-directed learning. It cannot be left to the teacher coming, teaching, and leaving, or giving few assignments or doing some assessments, and that's done, and you can get promoted to the next class. It'll go beyond that. Your ownership of learning a bit, this one year has taught a big lesson, and students who have been able to do that would be able to progress ahead, and schools would definitely go in that direction.
Yeah,
That's
thank
my
you, ma'am.
understanding of,
Yeah,
uh,
that's very well put, because given the fact that in the last few months we were sort of on our own, because there was no physical presence of people who we usually work with or interact with around. So having self-directed learning or having that motivation to keep going on, that self motivation was something that played a major role, and it will play a major role in the future as well. So yes, it has to come from all stakeholders, from teachers to be ready to take new challenges, to keep upskilling themselves, for students also to keep abreast with the teachers, be ready to have different kinds of activities and learnings, and for parents as well to have that openness of mind to accept a different way of teaching, because we are used to certain patterns when it comes to schooling. So yes, that mold also has to break, and it has to be directed with the self motivated or self directed learning. Very, very well said, ma'am. Thank you. Shunila, ma'am, your vision of what the education would look like in the next 5 years.
Yes, in fact, I was just listening to Seema ma'am and just thinking that yes, that's just what we would be looking at. The hybrid method and the blended learning, because during this time we have seen that it has its pros and cons. Where you have your asynchronous learning, and it's come to stay, and we are going to have to deal with some children being able to come to school and have classes, and some not. Assessments can be done online. It's much easier to take a PTM feedback on a Google form. So this kind of learning that we have done is what we are going to see much more of in the next 5 years. Previously, there used to be such a big hue and cry when a parent could not attend a PTM. We used to always say, okay, they can't because they were working or whatever, or even the parent was agitated, had to take additional extra time some other day. But now it's just a link. They probably take 15, 20 minutes off from their work and they can attend. So the entire education scenario has changed, right? From assessments to PTMs to, of course, learning. And a lot of time is going to be also saved. But that, of course, does not mean that the way we are looking at it, it cannot completely replace the face-to-face learning which we do get in a school, the social interaction skills when we come to school. But yes, a mixture of this is going to be looking at in the future. And I'm sure that all of us over here, we have more or less the same things to say, and so many beautiful experiences that we have, actually come through and learned and understood, become more sensitized to the problems that were there, which are now avoided, or which now teachers also are able to voice, be it the bandwidth problem, rigging up the phone and trying to manage a math lecture, diagrams, all these things. So, this has also brought parents to a greater understanding because now they're with the children all the time. So, uh, this is what we are going to be looking at. I feel more tolerance also from parents. So, along with the hybrid method and the blended learning and the ease of a certain few things online, we're going to get more cooperation from the teachers with regards to this because they've had the children for a year, and we are also entering their homes every single day, so many times a day, and they can understand the problems that are there. So uh, the future schools are going to be, with the changes, of course, not only structurally, but there are going to be a lot of adjustments that are going to be made in this regard.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. So yes, that vulnerability that we all were exposed to, where the personal life and the professional life merged for everyone, where we all knew what everyone is doing in their houses and how is everyone managing the home and the work, and how are children when they are with their parents inside their home, and all those things were immediately and suddenly exposed. So everyone has had to make great adjustment, and there were great learnings also for everyone to understand what challenges the other person is going through. So I think one of the good learnings from that experience would be to have more to be more accommodating towards your fellow colleagues or to everyone who you are interacting with. So that sense of having that empathy has probably, I would like to believe that it has gone up for everyone, for parents towards teachers, for teachers towards parents, and vice versa. Trupti ma'am, your views on what the education domain would look like. uh, Ma'am, please unmute yourself.
Yes. So 5 years down the line, yes, technology is there to stay. Education will be enhanced due to technology. The things that were big no before are the necessity now. So we all scared to give our mobiles and computers to our teenagers or young students, but now that's the need. So it will stay. But also, I think as per the new education, national education policy and SDG 4, and the skill development will play a very, very important role. So I think that will be more of individualized education rather than a blanket rule. Also, as per the OECD reports 2030, it says that there will be four factors which define the education compass. That would be knowledge, of course, skill, ability, and values. And we see this coming in. So when we all were home, we saw each other's attitude, we saw our values, what are our values, and we have all gained from it. There was one wrong side, or some, I should say, a bad side of it, but the side was much larger. So I think skill development will be there. It will be not a blanket rule. Also on the assessment, it would not be only it would be more of a holistic development of a child rather than only rote learning and other things. So yes, technology will enhance all this. So this will all be geared up with technology, by technology, and taken ahead.
Yeah, very, very true, ma'am. Because with the NEP coming in right when we were grappling with adjusting to the technology and adopting online learning, it has actually shown that skill development and holistic learning is something which cannot be ignored now. We've been talking about it for a long time, but it's actually time now to start working on the implementation. So, Ajinkya sir, your views on the future of
Well,
education.
Prachi, in next 5 years down the line, or even during these 5 years down the line, blended learning would be the big theme. And going ahead, virtual learning environment will become important globally, not only for graduation and post graduation students, but also for the students at middle school level and high school level. What benefited us back in May and June the most is we were from last 3 years running experimental digital blended learning classrooms in grade 7 to 9th in few of our schools. That helped us quickly gear up for the online learning. And when we are talking about virtual learning environment, down the line, it will be very evident and visual. You would see students having peer supported learning platforms. Flip classroom would actually be working, which we have been trying from years to implement, but then there are certain challenges considering the timetable, the number of students in one class, and the attention span. But now with virtual platforms, it will be successful, is what I personally feel. And a greater degree of collaboration would be very evident between learning platforms, students, schools, and parents. In fact, blended learning and digital platforms would open up a new window of opportunity for both schools as well as students, because due to physical limitations there are many things which as a value add on you as a school head would like to teach to students, but because of certain restrictions you are boiled down to the essentials. But now with virtual platforms, students can be at their convenience in the bus going back home, or sitting at home after the school hours, and you can run a class or an activity online for them to learn something. So that would be a big opportunity for all of us. Also, there is a second side to it. I mean, teacher is teaching in classroom earlier also and will in future also. Strong students can use blended learning platform to revisit the concept taught, just to strengthen it. I'm sure you would agree there are many students in classroom who would not accept that they have not understood a certain concept taught by the teacher in class, and maybe in that point in time these platforms would help them revisit the recorded lecture, or go through a worksheet, or discuss with a student group, and maybe he would understand, come up with doubts, and put it as a question to his teachers. So that is what I am expecting personally out of it. And we believe this would work best for middle and higher grade classes. For primary at entire management level, we strongly believe that earlier students are best left in the classroom with the teachers, playing around and learning simultaneously. Online learning or blended platform is not for pre-primary, is what we strongly feel. And also you would see increased contribution and involvement of parents down the line, because now learning is not stopping when student is leaving the school. It still continues when student is at home as well. Also now we have talked about all the good parts, or I would say positives of it. For people like us, government agencies who are in charge of education, there is also a challenge which will crop up, I'm sure, in coming years. There is a huge gap technologically when we see government education setup and private education setup. So I hope that we government agencies, CBSE, would be able to find some solution, so that when we get on board of this blended learning, so-called tech ed platforms, and virtual learning platforms, the gap between government education setup and our private setup remains minimal. So that is where we would see holistic growth, and everyone coming and rising above a certain level. So that those are my views.
Some of the points that you've raised are very, very pertinent, Ajinkya sir, because especially when we talk about how will we achieve the outcomes we are expecting to achieve in a blended learning where some students are present in the classroom, some are not able to join, and you cannot bring all of them at the same level because everyone has different capacities. So catering to everyone and making sure that that access to the education is same for everyone is very, very challenging. And since you brought up the pre-primary segment, this is one of the key questions that I'm very interested in finding out the answer to. And now I would keep the question specific to the panelist, and I would like Seema ma'am to answer this question. That given the gaps that were there in this last 1 year of learning and the students that will be graduating to the next class, what is the school's strategy to address that gap, and how to make sure that the transition from one grade to another that will happen now in this year will ensure that the gaps in learning are covered, because not everyone has been on the same learning curve in this period that we've had so far. So how has your school addressed this challenge?
So we have been contemplating, discussing, deliberating on this for quite some time, because each age group of class is going to be facing a different kind of challenge and a problem. When we think of early childhood, and we see, oh, this child was in junior KG and suddenly will be sitting in first standard. So how would they find themselves physically also in a different environment? Because a pre-primary classroom is very different from a mainstream school, first standard onwards. Of course, first standard is also as lively and effective, but spatially they are different. The space, the way it comes out, and the interactions are different. And how would the child suddenly switch from here to there? And one whole year the child has been at home, to a higher class student who is suddenly that entire year, it was not a 0 year, as people were wanting it to be initially. There was a lot of talk of that year becoming a 0 year because it's a pandemic. And but no, the classes have gone on, the learning has happened, evaluations have happened, and they are moving to the next level. So they have done the curriculum required for, say, fifth or sixth or eighth or ninth, and they're ready for the next class. Now, there has been throughout, no, as we were discussing, we did not anticipate this would keep stretching. So every time it was, there was another month added, another 2 months added, and we were all waiting for when is the school going to reopen. So before that readiness, every time there was a discussion, okay, I'm going to have whatever we have taught online, we are going to encapsulate that in a classroom manner, in an offline manner. And it would be summarized, the gist would be prepared, bite-sized learning would be done for children to catch on the concepts. And they have done a lot of other process online, but these bite-sized learning would have a lot of would gain a lot of importance in just finishing off that class and moving on to the next class, or getting ready for the next class. And as we see, it's time for the final exams in February, March, and we are still there. So the students have not started coming to school yet. That now there is deliberation that, okay, we'll be having our pen and paper exam for senior classes, at least the 9th and 10th. Let's do that. And rest of them can be evaluated online. But when they come in, what do we do? Because how we're not really able to assess the students to that degree with an online exam. MCQs has its limitation, and if you're giving a proper exam paper for them to download and upload again, how authentic is it? Because everybody, the averages are super high, so everybody is doing a very good paper is being put in. How effectively and correctly are we evaluating and assessing that this is what the child knows? We don't want to know what the child doesn't know, but how much does the child know so we can prepare him for the next year? So what else do we need to do with the child? That curriculum needs to be a little bit in tune with the definite concepts that have been taught in the earlier class and what is required in the next class. So this year, before we begin with the next academic year, a lot of curriculum planning is happening vertically, one class to the other class and then the next class. And at the same time, we're also talking of bite-sized learning to happen. Even though the child would come into the next class in the senior classes, they don't have to sit through in the 5th standard class. For pre-primary, we were contemplating, let the child just be for a month at least in senior KG before he comes to first. Or, in junior KG, if the child is going to move from playgroup to junior KG, let him be in nursery class for some days at least 2-3 weeks. So we have been talking about this. So it is at different levels, we would have to adapt to it in a different manner. So that's what we have been discussing. So in pre-primary to class 1, we would look at it differently. In higher classes, that vertical integration is gaining a lot of importance. We're talking of bite-sized learning to be brought in. So even though the child would be sitting in the next class, there has to be a summarize, a sort of, I can't say recapitulation of the whole year can't happen in a few classes, but some bite-sized learning, something to supplement what has been done. And activities have been happening all along. So showcasing all of that in some format to the children, so that that transition is seamless and smooth. That is the focus. So that's what I think we should be doing.
Yeah. So very, very rightly put, ma'am. There can't be one recommendation or one solution that will fix for all of these classes. We have to have a strategy across the levels, and also, like you mentioned, we cannot recapitulate the entire course, but a refresher is definitely
Yes.
needed for students to transition into the next grade. So moving on from there, I would like to ask Trupti ma'am this one question that I've been asking in the earlier panels also, that parents and even the teachers with the younger students, the kindergarten and the pre-primary, they have had such huge challenges keeping them engaged in the online mode. And we know Ajinkya sir also mentioned that they are best left within the classrooms for a better learning outcome. But what is it that was implemented by you or by your institution to make sure that there is some engagement and something that worked in the online mode? Of course, we are waiting for them to go back to the classroom, but how was it dealt with while the online classes were in full swing?
Yeah, so when this pandemic started, it was a huge challenge to keep this young children occupied, because first there was limitation on screen time. The parents were not very willing to let them go beyond 1 hour or half an hour and be there on the screen because they were scared of their eyes. So we started slow. We asked the parents that it is you just attend English and mathematics, and rest can, if you wish to attend, you attend. There is no compulsion over it. So we left it on parents. Moreover, it was we brought in a blended learning here, where it was more practical than teaching through the digital platform. So even though on digital platform, so if they are measuring, so which is in the normal curriculum in CBSE and ICSE and HSC, like if you're scaling, you don't have to do it like a scale and in front of a teacher. You just use your hand span or foot span and do it. So there were a lot of practical things involved. So they used to how plants grow. So it was more of fun, more of innovation rather than just typical teaching running online, because that would also bug them off. Their concentration level was very, very small because their age is so low. So we have to keep on changing the activities. We couldn't be stuck to one activity. So if it's 5 minutes, 7 minutes, then we have to change the topic, change the activity, give it a lighter mode, then bring back them to something which is serious. So if it was continuously serious, they can't cope with it, because they are just entering into school life. For them to it was only fun, and it was expected to be very fun loving environment if they went to school physically, because I'm sure that all our schools with this kindergarten and first standard students, they are very, very gentle, and the teachers are like mothers in the school, where they will treat them properly. But there was no physical touch, no interaction, no peer learning. They were missing all that play, the play on the slide, the play on the swing. So everything was missed. There was a lot of music involved, because we realized that music gains their attention very soon. So we thought that let us introduce some music to them. Let us have them singing, reading. So there were more of fun activities involved rather than this typical strict notebook and pen pencil activities. And I think that helped. Also with the teachers, we had one co-teacher. So there were a lot of informal conversations between teachers and student, because they were willing to talk to their teachers. They don't wanted to only know about what is there in English and what is there in EVS and how this addition has to be done. So they wanted to talk about how they are dealing with the lockdown, what are they missing with. So they wanted to interact. So we kept a special time for students to interact, casual things with their teachers. Every means all the sessions will start with that casual time, so they can get aligned to that teachers who they have not met till date, and then they were easy to adapt to whatever was taught to them. So I think that helped a lot.
Some very interesting points, ma'am, because this is something that I've been trying to understand for a very long time, that how have the school administration and teachers managed this very, very dynamic, very, very, very energetic group of students, which you cannot make them sit in one class for 1 hour. So some very good ideas also shared by you, ma'am. Thank you for sharing some of the best practices. So given the kind of dynamism that is required to keep the smaller group of younger group of students engaged, I personally feel that a similar dynamism is required for skill based education as well, because you cannot have one fixed way of imparting skills to different set of students. So this next question I have for Shanila ma'am, because ma'am, you have a vision for 21st century skills and skill based education. So what are some of the effective methods for schools that you recommend to incorporate skill development or skill based education into the mainstream curriculum or even in the day to day activities of the schools?
Yeah, actually, I've been really fortunate to be heading a school where we have a subject like that called Global Perspectives. And that integrates all the SDGs and all the 21st century skills. And so we take, say, 3 to 4 skills per term. So, what exactly happens is there are no exams as such on it. But suppose now my skill is communication. So, using all the subjects and integration of subjects and a very holistic approach, you can just address, say, one thing communication using activities. But then that does not mean that if we don't have a subject, we cannot do it. We can do it either ways. So, all the skills that we need to develop in our kids and the leadership and be it communication, everything needs to be done by making it through an activity base. That is what we recommend, that frame activities, go beyond the textbooks, look at various sites, look at what other schools are also doing, because that's how we all learn. There's no harm in finding out from others and seeing how it goes, and then develop a have a time in the day, like for example in a week, if you say dedicate 1 40 minute or 35-minute class to that, divide the children up in groups, and you see the way they present the skills. That is really such a change of perspective, because they come up with many different things. I think almost all of them no longer use PPTs because they find that just a typical teacherish thing to do. Make videos and very hi-fi videos, and then the role playing. Despite the fact that they are not meeting, from where they have managed to do a complete skit. So these are just some of the ways that we can do it. We have to teach them skills, and life skills are something that are taught right from the way we address the children. The please, the thank yous, and everything has to be in place. Respect for people, and respect for the fact that yes, you can take life skills as a subject and do something with it in life, and it's not to be looked down upon, because that mindset has to change. And in fact, we have many of our, in fact, Alpha School of Life Skills, and there are many others also who have had these kind of sessions with the children and sensitize them to the fact that yes, there is a lot out there that can be done. So this is what we have done as a school. We have used more or less an activity based thing, where we have made the teacher as a facilitator. She's on the side just guiding them. The children take the lead. Give them, ask them what they want to look at. They give you a few in a very democratic way. Pick up a few for that month, maybe one per month, and then let them present it and then guide them. So, a teacher being a facilitator is something which has worked with activities, and of course, there are so many massive online, opportunities which are giving us these very, very sort of talks and shows and things like that.
Thank you, ma'am. So, from what I can encapsulate from what you have shared is student centered learning is the way to go for skill development. So, that is something that will help teachers also ensure that skill development is a part of the students' learning process. And from this, I can actually connect to the next question I have for Ajinkya sir, which is how do we train our teachers in a way that they are ready to adapt to the future requirements of learning? So, how do we make sure the teachers are prepared to be in an environment which is completely student centric and they are mentors and facilitators rather than an authoritative figure that is imparting some knowledge from top to bottom? So how are we envisioning that crucial change in teacher education? So since you have been a part of the teacher education domain for a long time, so we would like to hear from you on this question.
So, Prachi, one way to achieve it is never stop learning, even if you are a teacher. And we strongly believe that continuous training is a sure shot way of achieving it. In fact, at our group level, we have made certain policy decisions wherein we end up giving minimum 5 days of training to every teacher every year, and looking at the scenario, looking at the requirements, talking to kids, talking to parents, understanding the areas of needs, we line up aggressive training sessions and rigorous schedules in winters and summer breaks. So that's the best slot when you can have teachers without compromising children's time of learning because they are on vacation. So we buy a little time out of it because that's also the time when teachers are on vacation. So a little compromise on that, but then that's essential. And we have been doing it from past many years, and now we are looking at its results. And trust me, it's wonderful. So training on pedagogies, training on teaching methodologies, examination is what works well. In fact, recently CBSE has done a nice job by starting online portal for teacher training, and nowadays there are many training titles which you were not able to find earlier outside in the market, even if you were having a need of it. But then now CBSE is providing them online. That's a lot easier because earlier teachers used to travel to a certain central location for a 1 day, 2 day training, so that was not convenient though the need. But now because it's online, it's a wonderful opportunity for us. We are ensuring our teachers go through it. That would be an open recommendation from my side to all the schools, that that is something which they can really leverage upon, because when there is a group can have a pool of trainers, but for individual schools, these are the opportunities which they can hunt through, and those are really helpful, and those are certain quality trainings which will definitely benefit our students.
Thank you, Ajinkya. So I think what you also rightly pointed out it as the period that we've had in the last 9 months has also given access to a lot of resources that were initially not heard of or not put together. So now that challenge has also been overcome. So there is so much collaboration and exchange of information that if we utilize our time very well and we are able to structure it, we can have a very well transformed teacher education process as well. So,
Also, Prachi,
really,
what I would like to add one point over here is that is again coming out of my personal experience. Not only we have made trainings mandatory in schools, but then we have incorporated systems wherein if we are able to see the outcome of the trainings amongst the teachers, we reward them through certain measures where they get benefited in their resume. Financially, non-financial measures are used, so that helps rather than auditing what they are doing. Motivating them by having some measures really helps.
yeah, this also brings me back to Seema ma'am's comment on self-motivated or self-driven learning. So these are some of the incentives that will ensure that self-motivated or self-driven learning is actually happening. So we've had some really engaging discussions and some very important points that have come up from the discussion today. So just before closing the session, I want to hear from all of you that one focus area that you recommend to school leaders to focus on in the next 5 years. So we can start with Seema ma'am and go around the panel. Ma'am, please unmute yourself.
We've been, sorry, Prachi, we've been talking of 21st century skills for so long now. I mean, it was so common to hear prepare children for 21st century skills. I think we have to go a step forward and we have to look at 22nd century skills. Now, this lockdown has fast forwarded us there. We have to look at, because collaboration has become such a key word now. It's come up in such a big way, especially in these lockdown times, or in this these when people are trying to, those lines have blurred, people are working from home, they're trying to connect online, and how we have partnered with parents also to ensure that our children learn, so that collaboration is not just a word by itself where we say, okay, it's a joint responsibility, we are taking care of it together. It doesn't stop at that. We literally have to connect, collaborate, and retain that culture. So all these C's are very, very important. of connecting, of collaborating, of culture being kept, communication being very, very important and very key, because that's one aspect which threads the whole thing together. And then ensuring that our teaching learning processes happen smoothly, happen very well. So I would say that is one aspect, collaboration, and the 22nd century skills, as we would put it, which covers all of that. Another most important thing is, I think the focus has come on social and emotional learning. If I'm getting across, am I audible? Yeah, the socio emotional learning has to be retained. I mean, we have to be very careful, because when we are learning in silos, or if we are in our own little mode, how much are we really mentally tuned and emotionally tuned to things around us? We've become so much more individualized also at the same time. So this is a very thin line that we are walking on. What do we do so that we are able to focus on these human aspects and human values, and how we keep everything humane around us? How do we do that with all of this online and offline and whatever's going on right now? So the focus has to be on the social emotional learning aspect as well, on wellness, on mental wellness, on emotional wellness. So I think these are a few things that I would lay my focus on, or my recommendation: collaboration, connecting with people, connecting in a way that our social and our emotional learnings are also taken care of. Our wellness is also taken care of. Yeah. Thank
Very,
you,
very
Prachi.
rightly. Thank you, ma'am. Very rightly pointed out, because we have also, that's one of the flip sides of being isolated, that we feel that
Yes.
now we can function in isolation, so why socialize? So that's one thing we really need to address. Tripti, ma'am, your recommendation for education leaders?
Yeah, Prachi. So I would suggest that teacher training be the main focus, because now the basic literacy will change. Where we were teaching programming in maybe after school, now it would be there in the school with so much technology coming in. So teachers have to be ahead of time. They are ahead of time, but they have to be kept on training and be kept ahead of time. So that has to be changed, of course, with the help of technology, so that there are no geographical barriers. You can have best around the world teaching your teachers, so there is no geographical or time barrier in that. Second, I would suggest that we should develop convergent and divergent thinking skills among our students, so their value, their abilities remain focused, and they are future ready to face what time has to show them. So I think these are the two things, and that could only be done through critical thinking and design thinking and such other skills. So where also emotional side of IQ, EQ, social quotient, everything is taken into consideration. So I think these are the two things which I think we should now focus on. Thank you,
Thank you,
Prachi.
ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Shunila, ma'am, your recommendation?
Yeah, actually, it's a blend of Seema ma'am and Trupti ma'am, because I was just thinking along the same lines that teacher training is important so that they are updated and not, and they should be at par with whatever is happening and can come up one step ahead, in fact. So for that, give them enough time also so that they can think. Upskill them and give them time, because creativity should not be lost in all this. There's a lot of creativity which can happen even now out of when they really have some time to think. So give them that. And mental health of all, be it teachers, children, and your own self. Self care is also important, because we are so I mean, just after say an 1 hour session of webinar, you will be a little drained, right? So much more, the all of us, be it children or teachers, they just they need that being able to actually come out of everything and pay attention to their mental health well-being. So this is what I would recommend strongly for the next uh, upcoming, what should I say, few years. And then, as Sima ma'am said, 22nd century skills are already kicking in. So we are all waiting to be aligned to that.
Thank you, ma'am. That's a very valid point. We don't have to overstress ourselves that it becomes a burden task. So it should be a joyful learning, not a forced learning. Ajinkya, sir, your recommendations for school leaders.
Yeah, so Prachi, rather than giving a recommendation or a piece of advice, I would share my focus areas because there are many expert members in this panel and sure watching us right now who are excellent academicians, and I stand nowhere near them in terms of capabilities. But then my focus area would be to understand the essence of NEP. That is an excellent piece of document that has come up strategically and adopt to the changes that it calls for in terms of teaching methodology or administering a school. And a subset to that would be it is also a kind of personal inclination at my end to have, or rather than have, to implement the uh, vocational education as a mainstream inclusion in schooling, because there have been several attempts by all agencies in past to have vocational education for schools, but then if you go through the list of topics, those topics are carpentry, tailoring, painting. I mean, the kids that we have now, these topics don't excite them. So even if school is providing that, there are no takers. So my inclination would be to have vocational education topics which relate to them more. So topics like artificial intelligence, managing finances, robotics, and alike subjects is what we would be doing in our schools down the line. And other schools can also explore these options, and I am sure these topics also excite students. That has been our experience in our adult tinkering labs, that students do get excited with these kind of topics. So we decided to start with these topics within vocational education and bring it to our mainstream schooling.
That's really important point that you brought on, Ajinkya sir, because when we talk about vocational skills, there is a typical old baggage that we are carrying, that carpentry, pottery. We are not saying that these are not important vocational skills, but we have to move on with the time. So this is something that while we were building the ratings methodology for schools, that we also understood that it has to be a global and a futuristic concept of skill development that we should assess, not an age old concept or an age old image of vocational education that we are carrying. So, thank you for sharing those thoughts. So, with this, we have come to an end of today's session. And before I thank you all, I would also like to say that the insights that we've got from today's sessions have answered a lot of my questions, and I'm sure a lot of questions of all those in the audience as well. So, thank you so much for sharing your points and giving us these great insights, which will help a lot of educationists in revamping their strategy for how they want to envision the future. So, thank you so much for coming together and giving out time for this session. And I hope we will meet again very soon and continue having these discussions. Also, for everyone who is in the audience today, I hope there are takeaways for you as well. And we will be having the next and the final session of this knowledge series on 10th February, same time at 4 p.m. The comment section has the registration link as well. So please do register, and we would look forward to having more insights in that session. And then we will conclude our findings through our white paper. So stay tuned and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Keep sending us your ideas, your feedback on the events, and we will catch again very soon. Thank you so much to the panelists, to the audience, and until we meet again, goodbye and have a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Prachi. Thank you, everyone, for this opportunity. Have a
Thank
Thank
you
great
so
you.
day.
much.
Thank you,
Prachi,
Prachi.
thank you.
Thanks.
Yes,
It was a
Sagesh.
Thank
pleasure.
you,
Well,
same here.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you,
Yogesh.
everyone. Good evening.
Good evening,
Good
all of you.
evening.
Thank you.